Live from the Export Beer Garden studios, you're listening to the BYC. So the South Africans have been dispatched in a clinical and professional manner, though in fairness, anything less than a 2-zip result would have been unacceptable and had Dylan Cleaver frothing at the mouth. Now the true test begins against our brothers from across the ditch, so often our nemesis and believed by many to be the Black Caps' Achilles heel. They've paid us the respect of bringing a fearsomely good side to our shores, and it will require our boys to be at their very best, using every resource available to us to overcome the lying, cheating, filthy men in yellow and Dylan Cleaver. This is what we've been waiting for, mate, isn't it? This is what we've been waiting for.
It feels like everything has been working towards this moment.
Yes.
The weather has got gradually better as the summer's gone on. The cricket's got gradually... Well, actually, it was pretty bad against South Africa at times, but this is it. This is what we're pumped up for. Starts tonight, but, you know, for you and I, probably, we're even casting our eyes further ahead.
Yes.
To the tests at the Basin in Hagley.
As a cricket tragic, Paul Ford, I know, like the two of us here behind the panel, you'll be a little angsty, a little nervous, a little worried, because... I think for all New Zealanders, there is an element of playing Australia and, oh, God, here we go.
Yep, I definitely have that feeling, mixed feeling of excitement and trepidation, Jace. That's exactly right. Unlike you guys, I am definitely looking forward to the T20s as well. I know we're going to talk about those shortly. I've got my tickets and a platoon of people are arranged to go to that match. And Wellington's actually buzzing. It's pretty random. Picked my son up from school earlier this week, and there the Australians were having a net at Wellington College.
Wow.
God, I could feel my blood boiling, and again it was that nervousness and trepidation coming to the surface. It's going to be a big few weeks, that's for sure.
You're in Wellington as we speak, of course. How's the weather? The match tonight there. How's the weather looking, mate?
It's looking mint with a little bit of a breeze, blue sky. It's all go. 7-10 first ball.
Great stuff. Dylan Cleaver, Davey Dum Dum at it from the get-go. Why not having a go at New Zealand crowds?
Yeah. So he says New Zealand crowds are pretty vulgar, but it goes in one ear and out the other, and that leads me to this hilarious joke that, of course, it'll go in one ear and out the other because there's nothing in between. Stopping it in the middle. But yeah, I need a little drum roll thing there, don't I? I mean, are they vulgar? You talk to New Zealanders that have gone and played at the Wacker in the halcyon days of the Wacker, and they say it is just feral. You're just getting abused from kids that aren't even pubescent. Are New Zealand crowds really that bad?
Well, I would argue, Paul Ford, passionate, and particularly when it comes to the Australians, and particularly when it comes to David Warner.
Oh, look. This is the height of hypocrisy. Is he being dumb, or is he just winding us up? I think. I think that he personally has done more to sully the game than any New Zealand cricket fan is about to do over the next few weeks. He's very, very touchy about his family being brought into things, which on the face of it seems fine, but his wife is out there dropping bombs in the media on other players, every kind of element of the sport, most other sports. She's a pundit. So she really is putting herself out there asking for trouble. Look, and as Dylan just said, you know, anyone who's experienced a cricket crowd in Australia, I mean, New Zealand is like a walk in the Botanic Gardens under a parasol holding a gin and tonic for the Australian cricketers compared to some other parts of the world that they play in, and compared to New Zealanders going over there and playing. You know, I remember going to the Adelaide Oval, arriving about the same time as the New Zealand team. We had to get escorted to our seats because the officials from the South Australian Cricket Association couldn't trust the crowds not to do anything to us on the way to our seats. And people were screaming through like the wire, "We're gonna kill you! Kiwis, we're gonna kill you!" I mean, I just don't think that he's going to experience anything like that, let's be honest.
Yeah, well, I was thinking and reflecting in the South African series, just having one of my daydreams, Dylan Cleaver, as I do while I'm watching the cricket, I was thinking about the umpires, actually, and thinking to myself, umpires must just love coming here. It's such a beautiful country, just on a very basic level. It's so beautiful. They'll be well looked after. The cricket would be pleasant. It's a great place to tour, surely.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever tried to view cricket through the prism of an umpire before, but maybe I'll try in the series. But
well, what I mean by that is, like, if an umpire's like, you guys are off to do the New Zealand series against South Africa, I don't think they'd be going, oh, bastard. What an absolute bastard. But anyway, Devon Conway, what to do, Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, he's in a ludicrously poor run of form, and I was just thinking about this the other day, and it almost eclipses anything we saw during the Hairy Nips phase, where we were sitting there scratching our heads going, what does a guy have to do to play himself out of the 11? I even think back further to the Jeet Raval times where he was just a walking wicket. The guy looked like he was walking the green mile when he was going out to bat. But anyway, since the World Cup, he has put together these innings in order: 12 and 22 in a test in Sylhet, 11 and 2 in a test in Mirpur, 2 in the Super Smash, 0 in a T20I, 20 in a T20I, 7 in a T20I, 22 in the Super Smash, 1 in 29 at a test at Mount Maunganui, 0 and 17 at a test in Hamilton. That's 146 runs, and if you've been calculating it like Paul Ford would have been, you'll know that's an average of about 11.3. But Gary Stead has great faith in him.
Yes, well, I watched an interview with Gary Stead regarding Conway, and, you know, he did that old adage, class, you know, you can't beat class, and he's had a phenomenal start to his career, no question about it. Is there an element, Paul Ford, of Skippy in his career? You know, because, of course, Skippy got off to a hiss and a roar. Has he been found out? What is going on? Is it just a lack of form combined with teams working him out?
Does seem like there's some technical deficiencies that have either become more obvious or simply just easier to exploit now, whether that's video analysis or metronomic lengths. I mean, you would expect that the Australia, particularly in the Test match, Boland, Nisa, whoever ends up going out there, Green, of course, Marsh. I mean, these guys are all pretty good at putting it in a place that makes it bloody awkward for a batter. And yeah, it does seem like Conway is it's not a rut. It's a I don't know, whatever. It's a sort of a
rock bottom,
Suez Canal type of form at the moment. And there's a bit of speculation, and I know it's been dismissed sort of by Gary Stead around how he obviously contracted something horrendous over in the subcontinent in Bangladesh, and Gary Stead said there's no problems, but he was sick and his eyes are fine now. Not that I was over there, so I don't know for absolute sure, but our batsmen do get their eyes checked reasonably regularly just to make sure, and he has no problems with his vision. He's seen eye people, so I'm sure he's had them tested. I mean, that all leads to the fact that it seems like there was something going on there, and that just, you know, I obviously am no ophthalmologist, but certainly doesn't seem like a very helpful time for him to be having potential eye issues as well.
For some reason, I was reflecting in terms of thinking about Devon Conway. I don't know if you guys recall the great Jeff Howarth.
Yes, I do.
When he went ahead, had that towards the end of his career there, when he basically, when he was in the West Indies, said, let's just go and get this over and done with, because it was so bad. I mean, I wonder too with batsmen, and he's a class batsman, where he's able to say to himself, look, I'm at the bottom here. The only way's up, and I've just got to go up there and bat positively and back myself, Dylan.
Well, how do we help him? We've got this is the platform to do it.
I think he should retire.
Okay, I was actually thinking more along the lines of a bottle of Don Julio tequila rather than another evening spent in front of the laptop looking at clips of his technique.
So you're basically saying a night out with the boys.
Yeah.
Let's go hard. Let's get hammered, fellas.
Brendan McCullum kind of approach.
Yeah, a couple of durries, and all will be well. I mean, yeah, I guess at some that could work. I mean, at some point there's got to be a letting go of everything that's happened in the last sort of year, and just look ahead and go, okay, let's start again and do what we can, Paul.
I'm on board with that. I remember having vertigo once, which is sort of like, I know it's not quite your eyes, it's your ears, but my solution to that was to go out and get massively steamed on K Road with G Lane till 4 o'clock in the morning, wearing double denim. And I had a terrible headache and stuff in the morning, but my vertigo was fixed. So, that's what I'd be suggesting Devon Conway might contemplate doing. I would also ask him to get the tape out of that sublime 200 at Lord's in June 2021, just to remind himself of how bloody amazing he is. That was talked about as the greatest debut at Lord's of all time. I think I am confident Morning, boys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's look at this T20 series. Dylan, where do you see it going? Strong Australian side.
Yeah, and possibly not the strongest New Zealand side we can put out.
Yes.
2-1 Australia.
Paul Ford.
Yeah, I had 2-1 as well, and I really hope that if that is going to be the final score, so I'm going to predict that New Zealand gets home tonight and then goes and has a few issues up in Auckland.
Okay, I'm going Black Caps 2-1. Why not?
Mate.
Hey, now listen, let's look at the Test squad. And against the South Africans, obviously, we were expected to win. It was not a great South African side. We were clinical. We got the job done. There were a few testy moments. But there were some things I was very excited by. But let's look at this New Zealand Test squad to face Australia. Southee skipper. Can I make the point too? I love Southee as a skipper. I think he's innovative. I think he's got a great cricketing brain on him. He's doing a great job. Blundell, another man struggling for form. Conway, struggling for form. Henry, Latham, Mitchell, O'Rourke, Phillips, Ravindra, Santner, Wagner, Williamson and Young. And can I just... Oh, and there's no... Jamison's still injured.
Yeah, he's out for a year.
A year?
Where have you been?
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Stress fracture of the back in a similar place. Cannot
How did I miss that?
do surgery again. So it is really a case of rest and rehab. So, yeah, he will not be bowling again until next summer.
Well, I'm looking at that Test side, Dylan Cleaver, and I'm thinking about the out-of-form batsman. And I would put Latham in there too, wouldn't you? And so...
Absolutely.
She's looking a bit dicey on that front. Who's opening for you?
Well, this is the pinch point, actually. So there was no one outside the squad as a batter who I thought had made a compelling case to be brought in. So, except for possibly Henry Nicholls, believe it or not, who's playing really, really well in domestic cricket. So if you're going to go with the batters that you had for the South Africa series, which makes sense, the only thing you can do now is, if you do want to make a change, is tinker with the order a bit. But I don't think they will. I think they're going to trust Conway to come back into form, as Paul mentioned. Watch clips of the Lord's Test. Latham's not going anywhere. So, but I did have a thought that maybe Ravindra could slot into the opener, which is what he's done for Wellington for years. And you bring Young into that middle order, but I just don't think they do it. There's no simple solution there other than batters finding their form again. And I mean, Young, as nice as he played in that last innings against South Africa, has still done nothing to convince you that he's going to be a better Test option against that Australian red ball attack than Devon Conway.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's not forget the attack they're going to be up against, Paul Ford. I mean, they're going to be under the hammer. Who have you got opening?
Yeah, I'm stuck against nothing Mickey Mouse. Conway, Latham, Kane and Ravindra, Mitchell. I've got a conundrum with Young and Phillips. I feel like it's the better chance of succeeding against Australia. But if Santner doesn't play, we're going to need Phillips' spin. So there's a little bit of something to be decided there. And then it's Henry, Southee, and then
I kind of think Phillips has got to play.
O'Rourke or Wagner. Yeah,
I kind of think Phillips has got to play because he brings something different. And
spark plug.
Although you never pick anyone for their fielding. Shit just seems to happen around him.
Yes,
and so I think he would definitely play. I would like to see Young play because I think he has got the technique to play at Test level. He had that magnificent one-day series against a nearly full-strength Australian lineup a few years ago that included Stark and Cummins and Hazelwood, where he got 2 tons in a 70, albeit in a different format. But I really do think that he should play, but it's just where. It's just really difficult to slot him in. And the other the other pinch point in this team is that as magnificent a record as he's got, Southee and Henry took bugger all wickets against South Africa. Although I guess you could argue the conditions were probably the opposite of what they expected to see. Nevertheless, it was a fairly lean series for those guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're obviously going to be bolstered by Mitchell coming back. That's going to help us there. There's a real vulnerability now that I'm looking at that lineup in the batting. I just want to get your guys' gauge on Will O'Rourke. I was really impressed. Geez, he bowled well against South Africa. And the talk has been, regarding his selection, that he's one of those bowlers that can bowl a magic ball. I liked his pace. I liked his height. And I reckon he's a real boon for us going forward, Paul Ford.
Yes, and thank Christ he's playing for New Zealand and not for England where he was born. Yeah, absolutely. He's been terrific. And, whilst my heart just goes out to Cole Jamieson, I mean, shocking timing. He's had a raft of terrible long-term injuries.
Yes.
The timing in terms of bringing O'Rourke through, you've got to say, in terms of the selectors, is absolutely sublime. And they'll do some damage. It's all of the signals are that this young fella has got the mental fortitude to stand up to and be counted in this Australian series too. He's just not put a foot wrong since he's been given these opportunities.
Do we take a specialist spinner? I mean, I thought Ravindra, bowled well against South Africa. I
thought he bowled poop in that second innings.
Well, he didn't bowl great in the second innings. Fair cop there. Phillips. Yeah, I mean, handy, but a bit wayward at times. Do we just bite the bullet there and go, hey, let's select a specialist spinner in Santner and to be done with it?
Yeah, I don't mind the idea of picking a specialist spinner, also for a little bit of insurance policy for the batting too. When we played South Africa with the Henry, Wagner, Southey, O'Rourke, Fearsome, Foursome, you essentially had 4 number 10s batting from number 8 down.
It was a long tail.
Yeah. How you configure that if Santner plays? Does he play instead of a Phillips, or does he play instead of a seamer? I presume they play him instead of a seamer. Which one would it be?
Wagner.
Yeah, well, I don't think Wagner will play. Would they play Southey, Henry,
O'Rourke,
Santner?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not bad. Get a few overs out of
Ravindra
and Phillips, and at a real pinch, Mitchell.
Yes, Phillips is such an interesting player, because it's almost like he's not on the side for anything in particular in a way, but yet his fielding is sensational. He's a handy bowler and he's a handy batsman, Paul Ford. Yeah,
I mean, Grant Elliott used to be referred to as third-party fire and theft, and it does feel a little bit like Phillips is operating that kind of model as well, where he's covering for all sorts of roles. Yeah, I do wonder whether he's going to get squeezed out with Mitchell coming back in, though. It's a great decision for the selectors to have to make, to be honest.
Now let's get into the big debate.
Yes, let's do that.
Kane Williamson. Such a majestic player, and there's, been a few accusations bandied about that he's a flat track bully and a minnow basher. Yes. But let's look at the stats. Let's go through it, fellas, and we'll start with you, Dylan.
Well, I've actually compiled, and this is a podcast, so you can't see it, but for your benefit, Jason, and for your benefit, Paul Ford, I have power ranked all of Kane Williamson's 32 Test centuries in order.
Jesus.
With the 140 against Australia at the Gabba in 2015 is my personal favourite.
Yes.
Kane Williamson century, and the 104 he scored against England at Hamilton in 2019 is my least favourite. That was the appalling one where, well, it wasn't an appalling knock, but Joe Denley dropped maybe the easiest catch in Test history at a kind of short mid-on. But he scored 19 centuries at home. He scored 13 away. That doesn't imply that he's just a home track bully. Obviously you're going to bat better in your own conditions, so that would seem to be a fairly standard mix.
Well, how long? I'll just stop you there, because there's an argument too that New Zealand conditions are not conducive to, we always used to say, he's batting in New Zealand conditions, so therefore his average is actually quite good.
Yeah, well, particularly if you get that in the first innings of a test, that's brilliant. And he's done that a few times. He scored 4 against England. This is subjective. I would consider the minnows, and this changes a little bit from time to time, but Sri Lanka, West Indies, Zimbabwe and Bangladesh are probably your bottom 4 at the moment, although Sri Lanka have had times when they're very formidable, especially at home, and even the West Indies on Kane's first tour to the West Indies, he didn't score a run. But anyway, he has scored 4 against England, 2 against Australia, 6 against South Africa, 2 against India, 5 Sri Lanka, 3 West Indies, 1 Zimbabwe, 4 the Bangers, and 5 Pakistan. So by that reckoning, 19 against major nations, 13 against what you'd call relative minnows. I think it is a facile argument that he's a minnow basher. I think he's close to a god.
Oh, I think he is a god. You reflect on that South African series too, Paul Ford, and there could be an argument that he wasn't in great touch, but he just seems to go into this zen-like way of batting. No fuss, no bother, no leaping about in the air, just gets the job done. He's one of the greats.
Yeah, no, he is extraordinary. Yeah, that combination of incredible technique and a temperament. And I talked about it the other day. Dylan, you described him as having the, able to bend the game to his will. Well, how many batsmen can you say that about? I mean, it's extraordinary in terms of the stats and so on. The hundreds and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's just as you say, it's a bit of a ridiculous argument. I mean, it's not like New Zealand chooses who they go and play Test cricket against. It's just kind of ridiculous. It's not our fault that we've only played in his career. He's only managed to go to South Africa, is it once or twice? I think he's played 4 tests over there against Australia. He's only been invited to go and play in 7 test matches over there. It's kind of a ridiculous thing. It makes it sound like he's in charge of the schedule or something. It's kind of, I find it a bit ridiculous, frankly.
It's interesting too, because New Zealand don't get to play 5 test series, and there is an argument too that, if you're in tremendous form in a 5 test series, that you can go on a big run of hundreds. You know what I mean? So he hasn't had that.
It's a very good point you make.
In his quiver either.
Very good point you make, because over a longer series you get used to conditions.
Correct.
They're doing hit and runs on England. They're going there, they're playing one nonsense warm-up game against the Worcester second 11 and then thrust into a test at Lords with a slope and a ridge and green tinge and that, and they fail and they go, oh yeah, see, told you, can't score centuries against the big guns overseas. Now that's just bollocks, If they played a 4 test series, by the time he got to Old Trafford later in the series, he scored 287.
It's interesting too, because I was trying to remember what series it was when he was over in Australia, and basically the Australians, Paul Ford, couldn't get him out. That was the one before, obviously, the last travesty that we had.
I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, what one was that?
2015.
2015, yes.
140 at the Gabba, 166 at Perth, which I have ranked at number 20 of 32.
We'll have to get a photo of your power ranking there, Dylan, to post. Look, I mean, the stats don't lie, and over an elongated period of time too. It's not, there's plenty to sort of choose from here, Paul Ford. Unquestionably our greatest batsman of all time, and not done yet.
No, that's right. The other thing as well is that comparing him to Steve Smith just seems like such a tosser. I think that there's something about what makes him great is that he just seems like quite a good bugger to go and hang out with. And there's quite a lot of anecdotes about him seeing people around the traps out at cafes and so on in Tauranga. And people are going up to him sort of, worshipping him like us in a sort of in his demigod-like status. And then all he does is he asks kids about how their batting's going and what they've been working on and all that kind of stuff. So just that humility. I don't think that very many people accuse Steve Smith and Virat Kohli of humility. I'm not sure about Joe Root. He seems like I'd put him in the silver medal position out of the big four at the moment.
Well, can I tell you what Lewis says in defence of Kane as the GOAT? He says, I have always felt he was the best of the big four in terms of batting technique. His mental fortitude is untouchable, and he looks like he has achieved some sort of Buddhist enlightenment. I think these two traits have allowed him to continue to perform at an elite level, whereas Virat and Root have had their struggles. The only question was always Steve Smith, as the argument could be made for a better record, but this can no longer be said. If you consider Smith's 25 not outs to Kane's 17, then the slightly superior average of Smith almost disappears. And he goes on to repeat some of the points that we've made in terms of the resources, strength of the team, the 5-match series, etc., etc. Lewis actually thinks that no one has succeeded more often than Kane, aside from perhaps the great Don Bradman over a shorter career. And who else can accumulate hundreds even when he looks almost out of form?
Yeah, here. So we'll have no more chat about Flat Track Bully, thanks very much. The greatest of all time. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll take a short break and be back shortly. Welcome back to the BYC podcast. India 2, England 1, or Bazball 1, shellacking in that last test match. Jadeja 5-4. Your thoughts, Dylan Cleaver?
Yeah,
how much of it did you watch?
I watched a lot of it.
Same.
Yeah, and I get a little bit pissed off maybe that every England loss becomes a referendum on Bazball.
Of course.
Much like I guess every England win does now these days as well. They were just outplayed. I don't think Bazball lost them the game. In fact, they batted really slowly in that second innings when they were appalling. Well, I think the big difference in this one was that when Jadeja came on, he made it look like they were playing on a completely different pitch in their second innings. He suddenly got it turning and bouncing and ragging, whereas the England spinners, honest toilers, but you put up Ashwin and Jadeja and Akshar Patel, who didn't even make that third test squad, and Kuldeep Yadav against Tom Hartley, Rehan Ahmed.
The local vicar, as Paul called him.
It's a no contest. They did incredibly well to win that first game. They got a bit lucky to win that first game. They were pretty comprehensively outplayed in the next two tests. Bazball is become the hot topic because of the Joe Root dismissal, I would suggest, and the kind of annoying rhetoric that comes out from the England camp at times when you do wish they would just have a little bit more humility about it, and even a little bit of contrition, like, perhaps it wasn't the smartest thing for Joe to do at that point in time, but instead you just get, that's how we play.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Baz would have the opinion that, it's not always going to come off Paul Ford. That's the reality of the way they play the game. Sometimes you lose some.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think they've obviously just decided that this is their best method. And you can see in that second innings when they decided to sort of knock it about, that didn't work. Didn't come off, much better. The only thing that came off was Mark Wood belting the living bejesus out of it at the end of the innings. And yeah, look, I think, I mean, it's that point that Dylan made, really, that every game becoming a referendum on Bazball. The facts of the matter are that it has worked. This massively positive intent where McCullum and the squad and everything that's around them is making them all feel 10 feet tall and go out and play how they feel right. It's almost inarguable that it hasn't worked pretty bloody well for quite a long time. And I just think, it's their method. Sometimes it's going to not work. Of course it doesn't. Teams go to India and get flogged playing any particular style of cricket you've tried. It's a really bloody difficult place to win any games, and they've already managed to do that. So, I think it's hard to be. I find it difficult to be too harsh on their approach. I think everyone's zeroed in on the shot that Root made, and look, I'm not defending it by any means, but the fact is he's played it a bunch of times and it's come off beautifully for the last few years.
It's kind of weird, isn't it, when you think about it, and the criticism that Bazball gets, because essentially, the English have gone, we're going to go out there and play really positive, aggressive cricket. And the argument is, no, you can't do that. You know what I mean? And as you say, England wouldn't have had anywhere near the results since McCullum's been in there that they've had, were it not for Bazball. I just find the argument stupid. I mean, so is the argument, go out there and just defend all day against the Indian spinners and just knock it about a bit. It's just a stupid argument.
Yeah, and they won.
And it overlooks things like, arguably Joe Root dropping Rohit Sharma, who went on to score 1 million earlier on in that game when India were 40 for 3 or whatever they were, was probably arguably a more pivotal moment in the game. But instead we focus on this reverse shot when it's sort of it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in that people see what they want to see in Bazball.
Yeah, I would remind everybody that England won one of their previous 17 tests before Brendan McCullum took over. They were at the lowest of the low ebb. Having said that, I don't think that people should be exempt from criticism under the umbrella of it's just how they play. I think Joe Root should have been criticised, not for the choice of shot he played, but for the execution of that shot. I think Ben Duckett and Zach Crawley deserve criticism in that second innings for their appalling run-out that kind of sparked the entire collapse. I think they should sometimes be criticised for the rhetoric that comes out of the camp too, which is a little bit like, jolly hockey sticks, nothing to see here. We should treat them, criticise them, analyse them, just like we would any other
side. Yeah, I agree. Johnny Bairstow, penis or genius? Who wants to take that one?
Well, look,
if he's a penis, it's quite an impotent penis at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, I think he's got 8 ducks against India now, which is the second highest amount of ducks by any individual against a single team, and it escapes me who the top one is at the moment, but I'm pretty sure he's second on that list. And the other incredible stat that I dug out of the dark and dingy recesses of X, formerly Twitter, is that, how's this for a stat? And how do you even conceive a stat like this? Among all the batters who have played at least 98 tests, only 2 averaged less than Bairstow, and they were Ian Healy and Mark Boucher, who were principally wicket keepers. You could argue Bairstow is as well, but he hasn't kept in 43 of the 98 tests that he's played. So it's a
It's a deep stat. That's a deep stat.
I would lean towards penis because there's something about him that rubs me up the wrong way.
Same. And didn't he score? Hasn't he scored 0-4? And the 4 was a misfield that went through the fielder's legs, preceded by 0 and 0.
And he had the most magnificent review. Did you see the LBW reviewed in the first innings?
No.
He stood back on his stumps and missed one from Kuldeep Yadav. And look, for all money, it was hitting halfway up middle stump. For some reason, him and Ben Duckett got together and decided to review, and of course, the television showed that it would be hitting precisely halfway up
middle stump. Yeah.
On the baseball thing, and I guess this sums it up. We're talking about what terrible form he's in. McCullum has already come out and said, "I haven't seen the wicket in Ranchi, but I anticipate Johnny will be playing in the 4th test." So it's just like, we don't care. We're soldiering on with our approach, boys. We don't care what you guys think.
Yes, indeed. But I do enjoy watching that cricket, the Indians versus the English. Right now it's time for Dylan Cleaver's Who Am I?
It's Dylan Cleaver's Who Am I?
Yeah, well, thanks. It's been a while. I think it's the last month now since we had one, and the answer to that was John Guy. And we've had a few winners. We might have to notify one of you post-show because I have lost the names of them. But it was John Guy. He was the inspiration behind the shoulderless Excalibur bat. He was representative for Newbury when they started distributing bats in New Zealand, and he was at the factory, I believe, one day, and there was a bad knot in the shoulder of one of the bats. And he just sort of said to the bat maker, "Oh, what are you going to do about that?" And the bat maker said, "Yeah, don't know, the poor bugger who buys this bat, he's only going to need to take one on the shoulder and it's going to split off." And he said, "Well, why don't we shave it down? We don't need the weight there anyway." And thus was born the mighty Excalibur, wielded by the great Lance Cairns and made famous for the 6-6s at the MCG. He was an interesting bloke, actually. He played for nearly every first-class side in New Zealand. He was 5 of the 6 he played for. He was a representative of BP or Shell. Shell. Yep. It was Shell, was it?
Yep.
And there were some rumours, he's alive now, so got to be a little bit careful, but there's some rumours that he was a slightly difficult teammate, and he's actually already mentioned that he struggled to get on with some of the brighter lights in the team. He felt it was kind of like an old boys network type situation that he was going into, and he made himself very unpopular in 1958. He missed that touring squad. It was an absolutely dreadful New Zealand touring squad that toured England, and he played for Northamptonshire against New Zealand and kind of showed them what they were missing by scoring a couple of pleasant not outs in that test. So that was last month. So who am I? Regarded by many contemporaries as one of the finest batters and batting minds to have ever played for New Zealand. Yet my average of a tick over 20, accrued over 16 years, indicates something else entirely. There is no one simple reason why my test numbers don't marry up to my unquestioned ability, but the author of Mein Kampf can certainly take some of the blame. My playing career might have lasted longer if John R. Reid had his say, but as it was, I was put out to stud before the 1958 tour to England, where I did a remarkable job with my bloodline producing a first-class cricketer and a wealthy exponent of another stick and ball game. Who am I?
Send your answers to Paul Ford.
BYC at beigebrigade.co.nz. Is it
I can see your mind ticking over.
I mean, I know it. I'm just not going to say it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. Is the person is their name something to do with something that you might have on your face?
Jeepers, if it is, I've missed the clue.
Okay, that sounds like no. All right, fair enough.
Good stuff, Dylan. Right now it's time for Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
You know what? I forgot to do my administration, and I don't know where the current world's cricket's ugliest.
He got it exactly.
With you, Jason.
I got it dead on.
He got it exactly right.
I know. Was it that really nonchalant one?
And it wasn't a stitch up.
Yeah, even though you don't. I'm glad you said that, Dylan, because you're normally the one that's lodging protests. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I do remember Jace getting that nonchalantly, but I just I couldn't remember if that was last time or the time before. So okay, good, great.
I think he said four. I think he said 3 no balls, not 4, or something like that. From the guy who
got monstered.
Yeah,
bang on. All right, here we go. 3 bits of news out this week. There'd be something wrong with one of them. What is it? BCCI Secretary Jay Shah has asked centrally contracted Indian players to prove themselves in domestic cricket if they aspire to play for the country. He said there is a trend that has started to emerge and it is a cause for concern. Some players have begun prioritising the IPL over domestic cricket, a shift that we did not anticipate. Domestic cricket is the foundation upon which Indian cricket stands, and it has never been undervalued in our vision for the sport. Performance in domestic tournaments remains a critical yardstick for selection. And here comes the ominous bit. And non-participation in domestic cricket will carry severe implications. Number 2, a club cricketer in Melbourne has been timed out after walking out to bat without gloves or pads in a bizarre incident over the weekend. St Kilda 4th 11 bowler Edward Verco sacrificed his wicket to prevent the captain and number 3 batter Will Faulkner from being timed out in the final over of the day. St Kilda needed to survive 1 over before stumps, but opener Miles Frick was trapped LBW for a 2-ball duck. St Kilda incorrectly assumed stumps would be called if a wicket fell during the final over, so first drop Faulkner didn't put his pads on. He wasn't ready to go out to bat when Frick got dismissed. Faulkner was at risk of being timed out as he scrambled to put his gear on, and then Verco, who normally bats at number 11, waltzed out in his shorts and became the team's sacrificial lamb. He chatted with the umpires for a brief moment, then trudged back to the sheds for a diamond duck, dismissed, timed out. This selfless act gave Faulkner enough time to pad up and walk out to bat at number 4, and he survived the final deliveries of the day. St Kilda finished 2 for 2. Well done, that man.
How good.
Selfless. And number 3, Harris Ralph's contract has been cancelled by the Pakistan Cricket Board after the fast bowler refused to tour Australia and New Zealand last year. At the time, Chief Selector Wahab Riaz said Ralph pulled out at the last minute after confirming his availability. And they were really pissed off about it. There were no fitness issues from Ralph. He should have played. The PCB said his explanations at the hearing were unsatisfactory. They said playing for Pakistan is the ultimate honour and privilege. Refusing to be part of the test squad in the absence of any medical report or justifiable reason is a material violation of the central contract. They've also parted ways with Muhammad Hafiz, who replaced Mickey Arthur as their team director during the tours of Australia and New Zealand. 3 bits of news, something wrong with one of them. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think I know this.
It's your go.
Oh, is it? Okay, there was something a little bit hinky in story number 2, but I read that. It's a brilliant story and it's right, mainly right, but Harris Ralph didn't refuse to tour New Zealand. He just refused to play the tests against Australia. So number 3.
I was going to go number 3 as well. So I'll go number 2.
Fitzroy Doncaster were involved in that story, but were they the protagonists on the field, were they? Paul?
That's correct.
Antagonists, sorry.
Yeah, I'll go number 2. And they were 2 for 3.
Great specificity. DC, you are 100% correct. Pakistan lost the Test series against Australia 3-0, and then Ralph flew to New Zealand and played the T20s. Massively helpful he was too, as they lost that series, of course, 1-4.
Great stuff, mate. I felt for your spirits there. I had to give you that one.
I read every single piece of cricket literature I could find this week. I cannot have it again. I can't lose again.
Right now it's time for Cricket Violence Corner.
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
I sent you a photo of this one, just so that you can get a real sort of visual vibe of it. So playing cricket on any available empty ground is a rite of passage for all Indian children, particularly boys, I assume. Grab a bat, grab a tennis ball, make some stumps with a bike or a chair or a bin, and you're good to go. And this is the idyllic setup on this empty, muddy field in India, where a group of men were attempting to play cricket until there were unexpected pitch invaders in the form of 2 bulls who came absolutely storming down the hill and through the game. The first one was quite gentle. The second one really took a liking to, I think it was the bowler, and started absolutely tearing after him. And the players scrambled to safety. And worth noting that the Rajasthan Royals official accounts couldn't resist sharing the video of the incident and added the hashtag #BazBull, which is a trolling phrase that Indian cricket fans are using to take the piss out of England's ongoing Test performance. So relevant from that point of view. And of course, I thought an appropriate violence corner with the bull, also known to us as Davy Dum Dum, in plenty of headlines here in Aotearoa this week.
Great stuff. We're going to take a break now and be back with your correspondence.
Toppa Correspondence of the Week, brought to you by Leader NZ's Lasagna Toppa.
Yes, indeed. Just a reminder on the correspondence, incidentally, if you can sort of restrict it to about 150 words, that would be great, because we get some great screeds.
Yeah, we had to bin one this week because it was just too long. Some good points were made, but we just couldn't do it all. I'll read the first one. It's from Tom B. Hoping Paul can answer this question, actually, because I forgot to research it. Question: is it true that the full WT schedule, NZ versus Australia series being our last 2 matches? If so, then if we split the series 1-1 and end up on 66%, then we're in prime position. But there is a very real chance that Bangladesh could beat SL 2-0 and end up at 75%. Would a NZ versus Bangladesh WTC final be considered a farce and the death of the WTC? No wonder SA sent a D side with only 4 tests this cycle. Cheers from Tom B. I think that's wrong, isn't it, Paul?
What's the? I've got the World Test Championship thing up here.
There's a lot more tests than that, isn't there? I know New Zealand go to Sri Lanka, for example, to play a couple. So I think maybe he's cut it off halfway.
Yes. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I think some of the games that we're going over there to play, I think we've got 2 versus Sri Lanka. Yeah, it's we've got 14 matches.
Yeah, so these are definitely not New Zealand's last 2, are they?
That's right. Yeah. That's correct. No, there's more. There's more to come. I just don't know if the specifics have been announced.
Great stuff. Jeff P. writes, "Hi, gents. I see that Dylan has been in the news again, bemoaning Auckland Cricket's decision to go with Colin Maiden Park as the Auckland Test venue. While I agree the location doesn't look promising, is there a realistic better option? If you had to get on with developing an Auckland Test venue today, which would actually be delivered, what other choice is there? If there is an obviously better option, why hasn't it been selected? My choice would be to take a piece of the Chamberlain Golf Course. It would add to the cluster of Western Springs venues with the Zoo, Motat, the Speedway, the Outer Fields concert venue, and of course Western Springs Park itself."
Yeah, I do think Colin Maiden Park's a dreadful choice for a test venue.
I hated umpiring there.
I think it's a average ground and a hard to get to part of the city, and it of course means that you're not going to be able to play white ball internationals there. So again, you have split venues. You're going to have to go back to Eden Park. If Eden Park doesn't exist anymore, what are you going to do then? No white ball internationals in Auckland. It's just time for them to bite the bullet and develop a cricket venue My choice has always been Victoria Park.
I agree, Victoria Park.
I think they can play Plunkett Shield, whatever at Collimate Park, fill your boots, have your Auckland High Performance Centre there, do whatever you like on the domestic scene, but as an international venue, shockingly bad decision making.
No, you guys can have Taylor Swift concerts at Eden Park and we'll just have all the cricket down in Wellington. Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds good, mate.
Sweet.
Simo writes, "Hi gents, after watching the first test, it got me wondering what if the Super Smash was suddenly prioritised by NZC, i.e. basically exactly what has happened to South Africa happened here. I went through all 6 major associations and allocated 11 players to each side and made a test side made up of what was left over to tour the Republic. And this is what I've come up with. George Worker, Greg Hay, captain, Joe Carter, Barrett Popley, Brad Schumilian, Leo Carter, Peter Bocock, wicketkeeper, Michael Rippon, Neil Wagner, Michael Ray, Ray Toole. You can see my workings from the attached sheet. I've likely left someone out. Thoughts? Cheers."
Oh my God! I tell you, I've got that spreadsheet. I just checked the email. It is this is a thorough piece of work from Simo. Superb, absolutely superb.
Brilliant work, Simo. I've got nothing to offer there. I feel like the little wicketkeeper, perhaps, but nothing else springs to mind that doesn't play regularly in the Super Smash. It's bloody good. It's I tell you what, Neil Wagner he's pissed off enough this week. He'll be really pissed off to be named in that 11. That's for sure. One guy that I thought we could maybe get in the mix there might have been Delport, and I thought maybe Jacob Cumming, Dale Phillips, but and maybe Henry Shipley. We could resurrect him. But absolutely sensational work from you, Simo. Well done.
Maddie P writes, "Hey guys, I love the pod. After seeing a great double ton by Ravindra, I was looking up a stat. Since World War II, New Zealand has played Test cricket in 9 decades, 1940s to the 2020s. Only one of them did a New Zealand batsman fail to score a double 100. I reckon with a bit of thought, at least 2 of you will get it." That's a bit harsh on you, I think, Paul Ford. Come on, Maddie, give him a break.
Gee.
Brutal, man. Brutal.
Okay, so we're thinking here the 40s, definitely Martin Donnelly got one.
60s.
Well, I think Dowling might have got a double ton in the 60s, did he? In India? I'm thinking it's more likely to be the 50s because, when did Sutcliffe get his double ton? Whoa, jeepers.
Oh, yeah, it's good. This is good.
Turner definitely got a couple of doubles in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the 80s.
I think it might be the beige era, boys.
The 80s? Yeah, I think you're right because the 90s, Crow got his 299. The 2000s, 90s also Brian Young. 2000s? Oh, Flem, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you got Astle, Fleming, and then McCullum started getting in 2010s. I think you might be right, actually.
80s.
I think the 80s might have been.
Is that because our bowling was too good and we didn't score enough? There weren't enough runs to chase.
Yeah, to get the double hundy.
Crow at 188 at the Gabba is a big one, and John F. Reid got a 180 odd in Pakistan or somewhere, or maybe Sri Lanka. But I don't think there was a double.
Okay.
Oh, that is a little statistical anomaly.
We'll confirm that next week.
About the only record that the 1980s team didn't hold for about 40 years.
Now, I believe, Paul Ford, we've got a TAB bet.
Yeah, we do. I've just had something ridiculous pop up on my phone from the one and only G Lane, so I haven't vetted this, but it does look legal. We're going to whack a TAB bet on $100 on Davey Dum Dum to score more than 20 runs and the sexy camel Tim Southey to get 2 or more wickets tonight. And it's paying $6.50. So return on that one, $550.
Interesting. What's going on with the bounce, Dylan Cleaver?
The bounce had a few days off, but we're obviously ready to roar back into it again with the international cricket season resuming.
Great stuff, mate. Paul Ford, if people want to get in contact with us once again,
flick us an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz or slide into our DMs of the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade on the Gram or Facebook.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for taking the time to listen to this podcast. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Go the Black Caps tonight against those filthy cheating Australians. Until then, see you later.